You didn't get any stupid things or anything.
It's cute. About bacon. I got this thing. There's that little strip. There's a little strip in there. There's a spot. I'm talking about that little strip. It's like a bunch of stores, bunch of cheese. Okay, hold on. It is. Yeah. It's nice.
time cost going on.
John told you what happened, then what happened?
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our special coverage of Sean Diddy Combs' bail hearing part 2. I'm Jesse Weber. So after the rapper and producer was officially in the Southern District of New York on 3 charges yesterday: racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by fraud, force, and coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution. What happened yesterday afternoon? Well, Judge Robin Tarnofsky denied Combs' application for bail, pretrial release yesterday. Now, that is not the end of the story. Why? Well, his defense is fighting this. And look, they had offered a $50 million bond to be secured by his property in Miami, home confinement, GPS monitoring, but the judge was not persuaded. The judge was more persuaded by the government, who said that Combs should be denied bail. They argued that putting aside the heinous nature of these allegations and the weight of the evidence in this case, everything from sexual abuse, violence, intimidation, acts of kidnapping and arson, but really where it came down to is that Combs had allegedly been tampering with witnesses, reaching out to people to get them to not cooperate with the government. So now, Combs' legal team has appealed this decision to a different judge, who reportedly will now oversee the remainder of this case. U.S. District Court Judge Andrew Carter. We know that Combs' team has submitted a new letter to Judge Carter. This is in anticipation of arguments that will happen at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. We're waiting to see what will happen. Again, there are no cameras in that courtroom, but we will update you. There's going to be people inside the courtroom. We're going to let you know the latest. And I will also tell you that just minutes before we came live, the government, the prosecution, submitted a letter to the court as well. And it's interesting. It's really interesting to hear why they say that his bail, again, should be denied. And I will have a lot to talk about with this because we are learning a lot more details. For example, during the course of the defense's letter that they submitted today, they have also provided, it's 124 pages, it's much longer than it was yesterday, but they have submitted correspondence between them and the attorneys from the United States Southern District, the United States State Attorney's Office. So I have a lot to get into. I want to bring on right now, as we wait for these updates and hear what the judge will decide, I want to bring on former prosecutor and attorney Nima Rahmani to talk more about this. Nima, thank you so much for coming on. It's good to see you. So we're kind of in this breaking news bubble right now. We're going to wait to see. I'm getting updates, and if anything happens, I'll let our viewers know. I have to talk about this. I have to talk about this, okay? So this is the prosecution's letter. And in this letter, again, where they're saying that he should be denied bail, they quote a lot about what happened yesterday. They quote Judge Tarnofsky, who said there are also indications in your history and characteristics that I think are a reason why the presumption in favor of detention has not been rebutted. And I can get more to that, but there are new allegations in here that I have to talk about. So first, and this is quite shocking. I'm going to go towards the end of it. They say that, I'm just going to pull it up right now, that, where is it? The fact is, you know what? I'm going to find that in a second. Oh, yeah, here it is. So it says, finally, it bears noting that within the first 24 hours of this case's unsealing, so we're talking about what happened yesterday, there are already new concerns about witness interference as well as interference with a fair trial based on the defendant and his counsel's attempts to publicly discredit one of the victims. And they talk about how yesterday, during the bail argument and a subsequent appearance on CNN, defense counsel for Sean Combs impugned the allegations made by a statutory victim challenging the motivation and timing of her claims. The government therefore requests that the court caution the defendant and counsel not to violate, and they talk about a specific criminal rule. It seems, I think that's about extrajudicial statements. So the fact that now the prosecutors are going after Combs and his attorney about what they did in the last 24 hours as more reason for why he should not be released. What do you make of that?
Well, Jesse, when you're talking about detention pre-trial in federal cases, really taking a step back, it's really appropriate when someone's a risk of flight or a danger to the community. It sounds like the government's focused their attention on that danger component. Obviously, we know that Diddy has almost unlimited means. He's reportedly worth $1 billion, has access to private jets. But, in the 6 months after the raid, he didn't take off. He reportedly moved to New York to prepare for this arrest. So it's really that danger component. And I think what the government is trying to do is to establish that this is someone who can't be trusted if they're out in the community, because they know that an appeal of a detention order from a magistrate judge to a district judge, in any case, it's reviewed de novo, which means for the first time for those of us who are watching. So really, what the magistrate judge did yesterday doesn't really have any precedential effect here. And they need to convince this district judge, Judge Carter, that there's no condition or combinations of conditions that can guarantee Diddy's appearance at trial. So whatever they can do to show witness tampering, obstruction, intimidation, that's all helpful for their detention argument.
And by the way, but the defense's argument would be, and they made several arguments yesterday, that he showed up to New York, he surrendered his passport, he has not fled the country, he was waiting for these charges to happen, he's been cooperative, they put together a bail package. You know what else they submitted today? And I thought it was really interesting, Nima. Yesterday, I think their letter was, I'm going to say 14, 16 pages. This one is now accompanied by exhibits that makes it 124 pages. So they seem to be submitting more evidence in favor of why their client should be released. And what they submitted was a selection of communications, email communications between them and the prosecutors. And in those communications, they indicate that Combs gave his passport to his lawyers, and they informed prosecutors for the past few months every time he was making a trip. So if he was going to Wyoming, or whether or not he was coming to New York, or he was going to California, the fact that they were having those communications and saying, look, we're not hiding, we're letting you know exactly what he's up to, I thought that was interesting, and whether or not that additional information will persuade this judge.
It was interesting, and normally it doesn't happen like that, because normally the time between a raid and an arrest and an indictment, usually you're talking about days or weeks. Now, obviously, some defendants do self-surrender, but having prosecuted drug trafficking, human trafficking cases, sex trafficking, normally those types of defendants that are looking at mandatory minimum sentences in federal prison, they're not afforded the opportunity to surrender, and they're certainly not given $50 million bail packages. So the question is, if the judge does allow for some sort of bail, is Diddy being treated differently than other criminal defendants because of his fame, his wealth, and his celebrity status? But
well, can I push you back on that? Let's say, for example, I think the $50 million bond package is to suggest this is impactful to me. Right? This is what I can put up of a showing of good faith. Maybe if it's somebody who doesn't have $100 million or $500 million and they put up their house or something like that, it's a signal of what they can put forward to say that, this is a finding in good faith. I will show up to every court hearing. I will not violate the terms. I will not be a flight risk. Wouldn't that be sufficient? I think it's relative, right?
Well, it's relative, but again, it's not just about flight. That's why I think the government's focused on the danger. This is a presumption case. This is a presumption of detention statutorily for these types of offenses. When Diddy's arrested at his hotel, reportedly, there's a pink powdery substance that's likely 2C, which is an illegal narcotic. So, this isn't someone, again, this is the former prosecutor and me arguing the government's case. I understand. I think the defense has actually a decent shot, I think, of getting this overturned on appeal. I don't think it's a black or white case, but usually, me, we've been doing this a very long time. I usually bring that prosecution perspective.
That's why I love having you on. I get both perspectives. And to be clear, that pink substance was revealed yesterday during the hearings. Now, I want to let everybody know we have an update. So we have an update for you. Sean Combs, he's at the defense table. And remember, there's no cameras in that courtroom, so we're going to do our best to kind of give you a visual of what happened. He's at the defense table. He's in a black black shirt, not an inmate uniform, might be wearing the same clothes that he was wearing yesterday based upon that courtroom sketch. Two U.S. Marshals are seated behind him, and they're waiting on Judge Andrew L. Carter. We don't know how long this hearing will take, but we're going to provide everybody updates as it progresses. I think we also have with us criminal defense attorney Natalie Whittingham-Burrell to talk about this. So Natalie, good to see you. Thanks so much for coming on, for joining Nima and I. So we're getting also questions from our followers on YouTube. So if you have any questions right now for either me, Nima, Natalie, please submit the questions. We have a question from Gunn on YouTube. Natalie, I'll submit this to you. How long is Combs expected to stay in jail? Until trial?
Yes, if his bail status doesn't change today, he would stay until trial. If there's some type of change in circumstances between now and the trial date, if he is held, his attorney can file for another bond review, but more than likely he would be held until the trial date.
Natalie, what do you think about the chances that this appeal, having another judge, presumably the judge who will oversee the remainder of this case, determining what the issue of bail should be? Do you think that this judge will be more receptive to Combs' arguments and say, you know what, he should be released pending this trial?
It really depends, because Combs is in an interesting position. He's charged with a sex trafficking crime. And under the federal government, that comes with a presumption of flight risk and dangerousness because of the legislature. They looked at some research that said that people that are traffickers are more likely to take off running and not come to court. And so his attorney needed to rebut that by showing with some evidence that he's not dangerous. And that's what they had a really hard time with at the hearing yesterday. So I don't know what new evidence he's going to present or refine in order to show that Combs is not dangerous, because he was really more focused on the flight risk part of it during the hearing and not the dangerousness assessment. So he'll probably get that together this time, and maybe that will give Combs a chance at release.
Before you came on, we talked about how in the latest filing from the defense, the letter that they submitted to the court, there's all of this correspondence between them and the prosecutors talking about what Diddy's been doing, you know, when he was deciding to leave the state, that he submitted his passport to his lawyers. I want to let everybody know something. From this letter that I'm also reading from the government, that was a response, and basically, again, reiterating why they believe Combs should be denied bail. And this is the section that talks, the defendant poses a risk of flight, Natalie. And it says, both at argument yesterday and in the press, the defendant has emphasized his supposed cooperation with the government, including his willingness to surrender. The court should take that argument for what it truly is: attorney-crafted theater designed to convince this court that the defendant can be trusted and is not a risk of flight. Make no mistake, the defendant's recent behavior shows that he cannot be trusted or controlled, particularly now that he is facing serious charges that carry significant penalties. And one of the things they say is, at least in or about January 2020, when the defendant was unquestionably aware of the criminal investigation, the evidence shows that he is engaged in multiple freak-offs. So these are what we learned in the indictment, although for anybody who's been following this case, we actually first heard it during the Cassandra Ventura lawsuit back in November of 2023. But he says that even in January 2024, he's engaged in multiple freak-offs, some involving the interstate transportation of individuals to participate, has continued to use narcotics, and has contacted multiple witnesses. What do you make of that, Natalie?